"You were always her charity case," my cousin Nathan whispered, "right before Grandma's funeral. She won't leave you anything, just don't embarrass yourself when it's read." I wish I could say I was shocked, but that cruelty was Nathan's language, and I'd grown fluent in it. My name is Hannah Reeves, and I was 28 the day I buried the only person who had ever truly protected me. My grandmother, Edna Reeves, was my lifeline, and on the day we lowered her into the ground, my entire world was already splintering. I didn't know then what she had planned, what she had prepared, but I would soon find out. Let me take you back. I wasn't supposed to be the one she loved most, at least not by bloodline logic. Nathan was the first grandson, the golden boy, the one who was praised at every dinner table for his internships, his blazers, his college acceptances. I was the afterthought, the daughter of Grandma's second son, my father, the family's disappointment, who died when I was 12. And when he passed, my mother moved us into a tiny 2-bedroom rental an hour from Grandma's house. I remember her apologizing every time I wore hand-me-downs, but Grandma never made me feel small. Every Friday, without fail, she drove to our place with groceries, my favorite lemon bars, and stories about when she was my age. As I grew older, I started helping her instead. She had arthritis, then heart issues, and eventually needed full-time care. I stepped in, moved in. I gave up job offers, dates, weekends with friends for her, and I never once regretted it. Because every night she'd kiss my forehead and say, "No one's ever made me feel less alone than you do." Nathan didn't visit much, unless it was a holiday or some new girl to impress, but that didn't stop him from reminding me, loudly, that he was the firstborn Reeves heir. So the morning after Grandma passed, when we all gathered at her lawyer's office for the will reading, I braced myself. Nathan strolled in late, sunglasses on indoors, grinning like he already knew the ending. "Hope you brought tissues," he smirked at me. "It's gonna sting." I looked away. I was there to honor her, not to fight. But what happened in that room, what Grandma had arranged, was something I never could have imagined. She hadn't just left me a house, she'd left me a story, and a recording that changed everything. The lawyer's office was cold, not just because of the air conditioning, but the tension. Thick, uncomfortable, and undeniable. There were only 5 of us present: myself, Nathan, his mother, my Aunt Carla, the lawyer, and Grandma's pastor, Reverend Julian, who she had insisted be included as a witness and a friend. The lawyer, Mr. Bellamy, cleared his throat and pulled out a leather folder. "I will now read the final testament of Edna May Reeves," he began, voice neutral, eyes scanning the room. I gripped the armrest of my chair. "To my grandson, Nathaniel Reeves." Nathan straightened in his seat and folded his arms, smirking with satisfaction. "I leave my father's pocket watch. It belonged to him, and it now belongs to you. That is all." There was a pause. Nathan blinked. "Wait, what?" Aunt Carla sat forward. "Excuse me, that's it?" "Just a watch?" Mr. Bellamy didn't flinch. "That is what Mrs. Reeves specified. It is a family heirloom, invaluable sentimentally." I could feel the room shift, like a pressure drop before a storm. "To my granddaughter, Hannah Reeves," the lawyer continued, glancing at me for the first time. "I leave my house at 1443 Cypress Lane, including all contents within, fully transferred under her name and care. Additionally, I leave a letter, to be read by Reverend Julian at the close of this meeting." Nathan stood up so fast his chair scraped backward. "You've got to be kidding me. The whole house? That place is worth $500,000. "Sit down, Nathan," Aunt Carla hissed through gritted teeth. "No," he snapped. She's not even one of us, really. Her dad was a drunk, and her mom's not even a Reeves." I didn't speak. I didn't have to. Mr. Bellamy remained calm, shuffling papers as if he'd witnessed this scene 100 times before. But Reverend Julian was already unfolding the envelope. He looked around the room, and for a second, I saw the grief in his eyes. "This is from Edna," he said quietly, her final words to her family. Nathan scoffed. She probably wrote it when she was doped up on her heart meds. The Reverend ignored him. She wrote, "If this is being read, I'm gone. And I hope by now you've learned that blood doesn't equal love. I gave my heart to those who showed up. And when I couldn't lift my own arms, Hannah carried me. When I forgot what day it was, she remembered for me. She fed me, bathed me, sang with me when I cried in the night. That house isn't just a building. It's her home now. She earned it with every quiet act of grace no one else bothered to see." The room fell silent. "And to those who expected more," he continued, "I suggest you ask yourselves what you ever gave that wasn't a demand." Nathan's fists clenched at his sides. His face flushed red, and then, like a child throwing a tantrum, he turned and punched the wall behind him, so hard the lawyer flinched. "She's a manipulative old," he began, but Aunt Carla tugged him back down into his seat, whispering something frantic under her breath. I stared straight ahead, not moving. I wasn't trying to win anything. I hadn't known what Grandma would do. I'd never asked her for anything, because I already had everything from her. Her love, her stories, her trust. The deed was just paper. But her words were the inheritance that broke generations of silence. And now, things were about to get even messier, because the house wasn't just full of memories, it held secrets too. And she'd left one more letter, for me alone. I didn't open the second letter right away. Mr. Bellamy handed it to me in a separate envelope marked in Grandma's cursive, "To Hannah, when you're ready." That was the thing about her. She never forced anything. She knew emotions didn't follow a schedule. So I tucked it into my coat pocket and drove home, our home now, without looking back at the chaos Nathan left behind. The first night alone in that house felt like sleeping inside a memory. Every corner held her scent. The lavender oil she used to rub into her temples, the faint perfume on her scarves still hanging by the front door. I didn't cry until I walked past the piano and saw the dented old metronome still ticking in place. That's when I sat down on the living room floor and pulled out the letter. It wasn't long, just a single sheet of cream paper, folded neatly with my name written at the top and a pressed violet tucked inside. "My dearest Hannah, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer beside you, but I hope you still feel me in every room. You always had the gift of sensing the quiet things, those that matter but are never said aloud. This house is yours now, but it also comes with something more important: freedom and the truth. There is a key inside the back of my sewing box. Use it to open the cedar chest in the attic. What you'll find there belongs to you. But it also might answer questions you never thought to ask. Take your time. Don't be afraid. I've hidden enough from the world. You don't have to anymore. With love in every step you take, Grandma." I just stared at her handwriting for what felt like an hour. There was something comforting and terrifying about knowing she left me more than property. A mystery, a truth, a part of her past I never knew existed. By morning, I went upstairs. The attic door had always creaked. It still did. Dust danced in the light from the small round window. Her sewing box was right where it always was, beside her old chair, under a quilt she'd never let anyone wash. The key was taped under the velvet lining, tiny, rusted, probably decades old. I stood in front of the cedar chest for a full minute before unlocking it. My hands trembled, but my heart was steady. I was ready. Inside were neatly stacked documents, wrapped in a ribbon, a small diary, and an envelope addressed not to me, but to my father. I froze. She never talked much about my father after he died. I'd asked once, and she said, "Some stories are too painful to tell unless someone really wants to listen." And here I was, finally ready to listen. I opened the diary first. Its pages were filled with entries from the 1980s, her handwriting a little shakier, a little younger. What I read made my stomach drop. It turns out, my father had been disowned by the family when he was 24, not because of addiction or some scandal like I'd always believed, but because he had refused to take over the family's real estate business. He'd walked away from money, status, everything, and they called it betrayal. But Grandma? She never blamed him. She secretly sent him money, visited him when no one else would, and when he died, she fought to raise me, but was overruled by Aunt Carla and the others, who had power of attorney over my care. She had never told me, because she thought it would reopen wounds I had tried to stitch shut. But now I understood why she gave me everything. She wasn't just making peace, she was rewriting history, and she'd just handed me the pen. By the time I finished reading the diary, the sun had risen through the attic window. It felt like I had been sitting there for hours, surrounded by the past, breathing in secrets that had been buried longer than I'd been alive. But there was something else. In the bottom of the cedar chest, tucked inside a faded blue folder, was a collection of signed documents, dated, notarized, official. Deeds, letters, photos. Proof. Proof that Grandma had tried to split the family property fairly, years ago. But the others, especially Aunt Carla and Nathan's father, had manipulated her, pressured her, guilted her into changing everything back. They'd used her grief after my father died. They'd told her I was too fragile, that I wouldn't understand business, that the family legacy had to go to Nathan. One letter in particular stopped me cold. It was from Nathan's dad, scrawled in cold, hard ink. Edna, you've already lost one son. Don't make the same mistake twice. Hannah is not capable of carrying on anything. She's soft. She's emotional. She'll sell everything to the first man who smiles at her. Nathan is your bloodline's future. Don't ruin it over guilt. My throat tightened. So that's what they thought of me. That's what they told her, and yet she still left it all to me, still chose me, not out of pity, but because I'd earned her trust, her love, her heart. And now, I had the proof to expose what they'd done. I didn't want revenge, but I did want the truth to be known, and it just so happened the truth had perfect timing. Because that afternoon, Nathan showed up at the house, uninvited, loud as ever, pounding on the front door like he owned the place. "Hannah, open up!" he yelled. "We need to talk." I stood in the hallway for a moment, holding Grandma's letter against my chest. Then I opened the door. Nathan didn't even wait to be welcomed in. He shoved past me, reeking of sweat and cologne. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You know this house should have gone to me. She wasn't in her right mind. We could contest this, you know." "She was in her right mind," I said quietly. "She just finally saw things clearly." He laughed bitterly. "What, because you played nursemaid? That makes you the queen of the estate?" I didn't flinch. "I was here," I said. "You weren't. She remembered who stayed, that's all." He scoffed, then looked around. "You don't even know what to do with this place. You're going to screw it up, sell it for scraps. You'll never be a real Reeves." That's when I walked over to the dining room table and dropped the folder onto it. "Want to know what your dad wrote to her?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" I opened the letter and began reading aloud, his father's words dripping with arrogance and control. Nathan's face turned pale. I kept going. The documents, the old versions of the will, the diary entries. He stood frozen. For the first time, he was speechless. Then, with a roar of frustration, he slammed his fist onto the table, knocking over a glass vase. It shattered across the floor. "You think this makes you better than me?" he spat. "No," I said calmly, "but it makes me braver." He didn't reply. He just stormed out. And this time, I didn't flinch when the door slammed, because the house didn't belong to him anymore. It never had. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, because I wasn't anymore, but because the weight of what I'd uncovered felt bigger than anything I'd carried before. And I'd carried a lot, My father's absence, the shame the family buried me under, and the constant need to prove that I belonged. But now, I had something none of them expected. Power. Quiet power. And that's when I remembered something Grandma once said, months before she passed. We were sitting on the porch. She'd just finished a story about how she eloped at 19 and never told her mother until the wedding photos came in the mail. I'd laughed and asked, "Why are you telling me all this now?" She'd looked at me with that soft, mischievous smile and said, "Because stories outlive people, and one day you'll be the only one left to tell mine right." That memory hit me like thunder. So I opened the last box from the cedar chest, the one I hadn't dared touch yet. Inside was a tiny old-school digital voice recorder. It had tape over the back and a label in her handwriting. "Play this when you're ready to hear my truth." I pressed play. Her voice crackled to life, gentle, worn, but firm. "Hannah, if you're hearing this, it means the others probably made a mess of my funeral. I know how Nathan is, how they all are, but I hope you've already discovered that this house, this story, this life, they were never about ownership. They were about legacy. I kept things from you. I won't pretend I didn't. I was ashamed that I let others convince me your father was less worthy because he chose love over wealth. He didn't ruin his life, Hannah. He lived it honestly, and that terrified them. They tried to do the same to you, push you down, shame you. But you, my girl, you rose. You loved without asking anything back. You showed up when no one else did. You proved that kindness is louder than any bloodline. So take this house, fill it with music and light, laugh loudly, let people in who deserve your presence. And if anyone ever asks why I gave it all to you, you tell them and I want my story to live in your voice. It ended, just like that. I sat there for what felt like hours, not crying, not grieving, just still. Because hearing her voice like that, it didn't break me. It healed something inside of me that I didn't know was still bleeding. She didn't leave me because she was gone. She left me everything, because I'd already proved I could carry it. Not money, not property, but the truth. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do next, because this wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about clearing my father's name and giving Grandma the peace she fought for. The next morning, I walked into town with Grandma's diary tucked under my arm and the folder of documents in my bag. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Nathan, not Aunt Carla, not even the lawyer. But I had a purpose now, and the first place I went, the local newspaper. It wasn't a flashy place, just a small brick building with ivy climbing the windows and a hand-painted sign that read, Middletown Gazette, established 1906. But the woman behind the desk, Cheryl, had known Grandma since childhood. When I told her who I was, she smiled. "I remember you," she said. "Edna used to bring you in here for ice cream when we ran the cafe out back." I nodded, heart pounding. "I need to publish something. It's personal, but it's true, and it's time people knew." I laid out the diary pages, the letters, the photos, the truth about how my father had been erased from his own family history because he wouldn't follow their script. Cheryl read through it slowly, her face shifting between disbelief and sorrow. "I always wondered what really happened between Edna and her eldest," she murmured. "Everyone said he ran off, but she never spoke ill of him. Just silence." "She didn't want to hurt anyone," I said, "even the ones who hurt her." By the end of the meeting, Cheryl agreed to run a feature piece in their Sunday section. A granddaughter's inheritance, the truth behind the Reeves family legacy. It wouldn't make national headlines, but it would make local ones. And in a town like this, local truth was louder than anything. That night, I returned home to find Aunt Carla waiting on the porch. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. "I saw your car down at the Gazette," she said, voice tight. I didn't reply. "I suppose you're dragging up the past now, trying to make us all look like villains." "No, Ita," I said. You did that all on your own." She bristled. "You have no idea how hard it was after your father left. Your grandmother nearly lost everything. We did what we had to do." "No," I said again, firmer this time. "You did what was easy, what was convenient. You took a grieving mother and twisted her fear into obedience. And then you blamed me for being the daughter of a man you never forgave." Aunt Carla's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I stepped closer. She saw through it, in the end, and she trusted me to carry what none of you could. "She was confused," Carla whispered, her voice finally cracking. Sick, tired. "She was clearer than she'd ever been," I said, "and she left receipts." I walked past her into the house and closed the door. For the first time, I didn't feel small in this house. I didn't feel like I was trespassing on someone else's story. I was finally home. And by Sunday morning, when the paper hit every doorstep in town, the phones in Carla's house and Nathan's condo were ringing off the hook because Grandma's voice had been printed in ink, and the silence they built their legacy on was gone. In the days that followed the article's release, the shift in town was subtle but unmistakable. People who had known my grandmother for decades began calling, sending letters, even showing up with flowers, not for condolences, but for acknowledgement. Some told stories I'd never heard, about how she paid off a neighbor's medical bills in secret, how she taught piano to kids who couldn't afford lessons, how she once stood up at a town hall meeting to protect a single mother from eviction. One neighbor said, "She always said she had one granddaughter who saw her for who she really was. Looks like she was right." Nathan didn't come around again. Aunt Carla sent a short, cold email. "I hope you're satisfied." I didn't respond, because satisfaction wasn't the point. Peace was. And one quiet afternoon, after the dust had finally settled, I walked into the only room in the house I hadn't yet touched. Grandma's old bedroom. It smelled like her perfume and old wood polish. The bed was still made the way she liked it. Tight corners, white linen, floral quilt. I sat down on the edge, exhaling slowly. There was something sacred about that room. Something final. I walked over to her vanity, opened the drawer, and found one last note tucked into her jewelry box. Just 3 words written on the back of a photo of her and my father when he was a teenager. Tell the truth. And I had. I told the truth when no one else would. When it hurt. When it cracked open the lies generations had laid like bricks. This house was never meant to be a prize. It was meant to be a place of restoration. A home rebuilt with honesty, grace, and memory. Now, every creak in the floorboard, every sunbeam through the kitchen window, every photo frame on the mantel, they weren't haunted anymore. They were honest. I began hosting Sunday lunches just like she did, inviting people who had no one, leaving the door open on warm days, playing her old jazz records in the morning while I made lemon bars from her worn recipe card. Her voice never left. It just lives in mine now. And every now and then, when I pass by the mirror in the hallway and catch a glimpse of myself, I hear her say it in my head like she always used to. "You didn't just inherit my house, Hannah. You inherited my backbone. And you know what? I think that was the real deed all along."